5 years ago, her sister drugged her and stole her innocence. Her mother stole her inheritance and condemned her to a psychiatric ward. They left her for dead. Now, they drag her out to be a substitute bride for a man they call a monster. A hideously ugly, disabled tycoon doomed to die before 30. But the man who greets her is no monster. He is Liu Fu, a terrifyingly handsome predator who rules the city. And he is not pleased with the switch. Returning to her family home with her powerful new husband, Stella has one goal: reclaim what's hers. Her only clue to the father of her lost child is a jade thumb ring, a ring her treacherous sister now wears around her neck, claiming it as a gift from a mysterious lover. Then, Liu Fu's cold gaze lands on the ring. His eyes ignite with a fire she's only seen in her darkest dreams. Where, he demands of her sister, did you get that? Stella freezes. The man she was forced to marry is the very man she's been hunting for 5 long years. And her sister is about to steal her destiny all over again. Chapter 1. My darling, hold me. Don't move. The man's magnetic, low, and slightly hoarse voice echoed in the darkness, his hot breath ghosting across her ear. His body was a furnace, and the heat of his touch made her tense up, every muscle tight with nervousness. Stella Gu's breathing grew ragged. She wanted to escape, but she couldn't. It felt like being dragged into the deep sea, on the verge of drowning. One by one, his wet, hot kisses landed on her skin. A bead of sweat dripped from his forehead onto her neck, slowly tracing a path downward. The man's scorching fingers wiped the moisture from her collarbone, his touch gentle, almost tender. The suffocating sensation was about to consume her. His lips brushed against her ear, his voice a husky, seductive whisper. Don't be afraid. I'll marry you. The man gently wiped away her tears, treating her as if she were a rare treasure, and in the next moment, he stole all the air from her lungs. Stella's breath hitched, and her eyes flew open. She looked around. She was still in the car. It was that dream again, the one that had tormented her for years. The dangerous atmosphere in that room. The man's raspy voice. It all felt so real. She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to ground herself, but the events of 5 years ago still clung to her mind, refusing to let go. Outside the car window, the sun was bright. Benching was even more prosperous than it had been 5 years ago. Unbelievably, she had spent 5 years in a psychiatric hospital. 5 years ago, her own sister, Cynthia Gu, had schemed to have her drugged and dishonored. A month later, she discovered she was pregnant, with no idea who the father was. That same year, she gave birth to a stillborn child. At that time, her father's business was booming, and everyone in the Gu family had shares, including her, the unfavored daughter who had been sent away to the countryside as a child. Her mother and sister worked together, ruthlessly kicking her out of the house and committing her to a psychiatric hospital. While she was weak from childbirth, they stole her 10% stake in the Gu Corporation. Now, Cynthia was supposed to marry the second son of the Fu family. Rumor had it that Liu Fu was hideously ugly, chronically ill, and disabled. A man a fortune teller had declared wouldn't live past 28. Very few people had ever seen him. How could her mother bear to let her precious Cynthia marry him? And so, they remembered her. They would have her take Cynthia's place, a substitute bride in a marriage meant to bring good luck and hopefully cure the groom. So they sent a driver overnight to pick her up from the hospital. If it weren't for Cynthia's future happiness, they might never have thought of her again. Stella's eyes turned to ice. She leaned back against the seat and closed them again. What was hers, she would take back. And the people who owed her, not a single one would be spared. Lost in thought, she arrived at the Gu family villa. After 5 years, this place held no emotional connection for her. She strode inside. Just as she reached the doorway, she saw Helen Gu happily peeling walnuts for Cynthia. Cynthia, my dear, Helen said. If you hadn't come up with the brilliant idea of letting that worthless Stella take your place and become a widow, Mommy would be crying her eyes out today. Cynthia replied in her soft, gentle voice. Mom, don't talk about my sister like that. If it weren't for her this time, I wouldn't know what to do. I'm just afraid she won't agree. She has no sense of decency. Who knows what scoundrel knocked her up and made her pop out a dead baby. She should be grateful anyone wants to marry her at all, let alone a prestigious family like the Fuss. What right does she have to be picky? Your mother is right, Charles Gu added, his face stern. You're too kind. Have you already forgotten how she slandered you 5 years ago? Cynthia finally nodded, her conscience clear. Dad, don't worry. I won't be like my sister. My brother Jason and I will always be your pride and joy. At the mention of his son, a faint smile appeared on Charles's face. 2 years ago, when the Gu Corporation faced a financial crisis, it was Jason who had saved them. And for the past 2 years, it was his business acumen that had fueled their growth. And what makes you so sure I won't refuse? Stella's voice, quiet yet laced with a chilling cold, suddenly cut through the air. The three of them froze, turning to look at the doorway. Helen's expression changed. Why are you here? You should be on your way to the Fu family. Grandmothers will stated that Cynthia and I each get 10% of the Gu Corporation's shares. Isn't it time you return them to me? Charles flew into a rage, slamming his hand on the table and striding towards her. If you hadn't done such a disgraceful thing and nearly tanked the company's stock, I never would have taken your shares. How dare you bring this up? Stella didn't flinch. She met his furious gaze and curved her lips into a smile. That's fine if you won't give them back. She walked over to the sofa, found a comfortable spot, and sat down, casually crossing her legs. She raised an eyebrow. In that case, I guess I'm not getting married today. You. Charles raised his hand to strike her. Stella didn't move. She tilted her chin up, her eyes growing colder as she spoke slowly and clearly. Go on. Hit me right here. The moment this hand lands, I won't want the shares, and the substitute marriage is off the table. Charles froze. It had only been 5 years, but Stella had grown wings. How dare she threaten him? He was furious, his hand trembling in midair. Stella narrowed her beautiful, fox-like eyes. You'd better think carefully. Is this a slap you can afford to make? You dare threaten me? I'll beat you to death. As his hand started to swing down, Cynthia cried out in alarm, Dad. Charles stopped. She scrambled up from the sofa, ran over, and grabbed his other sleeve, pleading anxiously. Dad, don't hit her. For some reason, she could see in Stella's eyes that she was serious. If Stella didn't go through with the marriage, what would happen to her? She didn't want to marry that hideously ugly, sickly man from the Fu family. She would rather die. Charles's hand, still in the air, clenched into a fist. Stella ignored him, casually adjusting her position on the sofa like a boss. She lifted her chin, her gaze suddenly sharp. Give me back my shares. Helen looked at her, at this new confidence and demeanor, and her heart skipped a beat. How could this wretched girl have changed so much in just 5 years? Helen glanced at Cynthia, saw her red-rimmed eyes, and felt a pang of sympathy for her favored daughter. She walked over, scowling. When the company went public 4 years ago, I gave your shares to your sister. Instead of reflecting on your actions during your 5 years in the hospital, you come out and immediately try to steal from her. Where's your shame? How can you still be so thoughtless? A cold sneer touched Stella's lips. On what grounds should I give them to her? Helen snapped. On the grounds that she is your sister. Huh. Then let my dear sister go get married. Why are you asking me? I'll ask one last time. Are you returning the shares or not? Stella cut her off impatiently, the coldness in her eyes overflowing, her voice sharp and aggressive. Helen was so intimidated by her presence that she was speechless. Charles, a veteran of the business world for decades, was also stunned. Cynthia bit her lip, playing the victim. Sister, how can you talk to Mom and Dad like that? I'm your sister. We're family. Why must you draw such a clear line between us? Stella turned to look at her. She slowly stood up and walked over, looking down at Cynthia with narrowed eyes. Are you lecturing me? Cynthia froze, finding it hard to believe. 5 years ago, Stella had always done what she said. Sister, I was just. Slap. A sharp, vicious slap cut her off. Cynthia clutched her stinging cheek, staring at Stella in shock. You hit me. Stella's eyes narrowed slightly as she retorted with a smirk. What? Do I need to check my calendar to slap you? Cynthia burst into tears. Helen rushed to comfort her, her heart aching. It was clear now. The damn girl was not going to back down today. Stella glanced at Charles's pale, furious face and his twitching hands. Once I have my shares, I'll leave immediately. If you delay any longer, who knows if the Fu family will discover the switch. Since it concerned Cynthia's happiness, Charles swallowed his anger. Finally, he relented. I'll transfer the shares to you. Now go to the Fu family, immediately. He took out his phone, logged into the corporate backend, and initiated the process for a shareholder meeting to transfer the 10% stake back to Stella. A moment later, Stella received a text notification. With the chairman himself initiating the transfer, the shares would officially be hers within 3 to 5 business days. She curled her lips in a satisfied smile. Now that's more like it. But she didn't leave right away. Instead, she looked at Cynthia, her expression unreadable, and raised an eyebrow. Cynthia, think carefully. What else do you owe me? What do you mean? Stella's voice turned cold. 5 years ago. How exactly did I lose my virginity? Think hard. Cynthia froze. So what if Stella was certain it was her? There was no proof. She would pay Stella back for this slap 100 times over. She felt a chill run down her spine as Stella stared at her, and she averted her gaze. Weren't you just promiscuous, sister? Why are you asking me? Stella wasn't in a hurry. She raised an eyebrow. It's fine. I'll give you 2 days to think about it. Cynthia suddenly found she couldn't meet her sister's eyes. What had Stella gone through in the past 5 years to develop such a terrifying aura? Stella gave her parents one last, deep look, then turned and walked away. Once in the car, she looked at the share transfer notification on her phone, but felt no joy. Instead, her heart grew colder. For Cynthia's happiness, they truly would stop at nothing. If they had protected her like that all those years ago, perhaps her innocent child would not have died. Just then, her phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Stella glanced at the caller ID before answering. What is it? Well, the Queen has finally decided to grace us with her presence. Sooner than I expected, even. Stella's expression was grim. Get to the point. Just as you suspected, the soil quality at the psychiatric hospital was indeed superior. The past few years weren't wasted. This entire batch of orders has been sold. Stella wasn't surprised. She gave another instruction. Go to my safe deposit box at the bank and retrieve something for me. It was a jade thumb ring, a token given to her by the man from 5 years ago. Now, it was the only clue she had to find him. It meant everything to her. She hung up without another word and closed her eyes. Suddenly, the car screeched to a halt, even though the light was green. The driver frowned and explained, Miss Gu, an old woman has collapsed in front of us. Looks like one of those insurance scammers. I'll go around. With that, the driver prepared to make a U-turn. Stella looked over and saw an elderly woman convulsing on the ground, her hand outstretched, feebly trying to grab something. Her face was terrifyingly pale. The woman was dressed in expensive, luxurious clothes, not the typical attire of a scammer. It looked more like a medical emergency. Stella frowned. Stop the car. The driver didn't dare argue and pulled over. By now, a crowd had gathered around the old woman. Some were taking photos with their phones, but no one dared to step forward and help. Stella walked over to the old woman and knelt. A bystander muttered, Don't be a fool, young lady. You'll regret it if you get scammed. There are too many of these old folks pulling stunts like this these days. Yeah, you see it on the news all the time. You'd think people would learn. Stella ignored them. She picked up a small medicine bottle that had fallen about a meter away. She quickly checked the ingredients, and after confirming it was safe, she shook out a single pill. Then, she gently lifted the old woman, letting her rest in her arms, and said in a soothing, gentle voice, Ma'am, take your medicine. The old woman seemed to hear her and slowly opened her mouth, swallowing the pill. A few minutes after taking the medicine, her convulsions lessened. Just then, the ambulance arrived. Stella handed her over to the paramedics. As the old woman was being lifted onto a stretcher, she groggily opened her eyes and saw Stella's retreating back. She tried to move her fingers, to reach out and grab her, but she was too weak and fell into unconsciousness. Stella got back into the car. Not long after, they arrived at the South Bank estate. This was the private domain of the Fu family, where even a single plant could be worth millions or more. The living room was grand and imposing. Sunlight refracted through the windows, casting patterns on the cool gray floor, creating a solemn, luxurious, and almost sacred atmosphere. The Fu family had once been the most powerful family in Bincheng. Now, 5 years later, Bincheng was still their territory. After walking down a long corridor, a housekeeper led her to a guest room. Please wait here, Miss Gu. If you need anything, just ask. All right. Shortly after the housekeeper left, Stella sat down on the sofa. Her long, slender fingers tapped rhythmically on the leather, as if she were deep in thought. Suddenly, she heard the faint sound of soft footsteps. A sense of urgent danger shot up her spine. She whipped her head around just in time to see a powerful snow wolf launching itself towards her like an arrow shot from a bow. Its sharp claws were aimed at her neck. It saw her as prey, ready to tear her to shreds in the next instant. Stella's eyes glinted. She rolled sharply to the side, dodging its attack. As she looked back at it, her eyes filled with a bloodthirsty intensity. The snow wolf, having missed its target, was furious. It bared its teeth, its eyes gleaming with malice. In less than half a second, it attacked again. This time, it was even faster. But Stella didn't dodge. She met its attack head-on. The moment it pounced, she wrapped her arms around its head, twisted her body, and brought her right knee down on its neck. She pinned its head with both hands, her gaze even more ferocious than the wolf's. In one smooth motion, she pulled out a silver needle and plunged it into a pressure point behind its ear. Instantly, the wolf lost all its strength and whimpered, collapsing to the floor. Seeing her advantage, Stella pressed on, raising another needle, ready to disable it permanently. Stop! A man's cool, clear voice rang out, slightly hoarse yet carrying an endless authority. The sound lingered in the air, rich and deep like fine wine. Hearing the voice, Stella looked up, her eyes meeting the man's. She couldn't tell if he had just arrived or had been there all along, deliberately waiting to stop the wolf. His eyes were as still and deep as a dark pool, a powerful vortex that threatened to pull her in. He looked down on her, as if he were judging a prisoner. He was very tall, and the white shirt he wore gave him a refined appearance. His face was a little pale, as if he were recovering from a long illness. However, this sickly look did nothing to diminish his striking features. Instead, it seemed to highlight a wild, untamed aura that lay just beneath the surface. His chiseled, three-dimensional features were unforgettable. This was the Fu family's second son, Liu Fu. She couldn't help but look him up and down. Did these people have some kind of misunderstanding of the word ugly? His body was lean and strong. Where was the supposed disability? He looked like he could live to be 100, let alone 28. Stella released the snow wolf. Though free, the wolf's eyes were still full of defiance and aggression. Leo's voice rose slightly. Come. The wolf immediately abandoned its attack and trotted over to the man, slumping at his feet. As if afraid of being punished by its master, it nudged his pant leg affectionately. The scene stunned Stella. The wolf, which had been radiating pure killing intent just moments ago, had transformed into a docile husky in front of Liu Fu. She had never seen a snow wolf submit to a human. Leo glanced down at it. The wolf lowered its head and padded towards the door. Before leaving, it glanced back at Stella, a flicker of resentment in its fierce eyes. Stella raised an eyebrow. So, it was holding a grudge. Leo's gaze shifted to her, his eyes holding a sharp, commanding energy. Beneath their calm surface was the piercing look of a hawk. His thin lips parted. You're not Cynthia Gu. His presence was suffocating, charged with danger and an overwhelming pressure. Stella's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to see through her identity so quickly. She pursed her red lips and admitted it freely. I am Cynthia's older sister, Stella Gu. Leo sized her up. She wasn't tall, with delicate, pretty features, but she was far too thin. He estimated she only came up to his shoulder. Such a small thing. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed she could fight a wolf with her bare hands. And not only that, but she had gained the upper hand. It was hard to reconcile the calm, deadly woman who had faced the wolf with the person standing before him now. He raised an eyebrow. A substitute bride? You've got some nerve. Stella swallowed hard as the pressure intensified, surrounding her. From the moment this man had entered the room, he had controlled its entire atmosphere. She didn't know what he was thinking, but she knew that the snow wolf must have been acting on his orders. His purpose was a mystery, but from his cold gaze, she could tell that he was not pleased with her. Suddenly, Leo stepped closer. A faint scent of sandalwood filled her senses, and her heart jolted. It reminded her of the stranger from that night 5 years ago. Their scents were so similar. While she was lost in thought, the man's long arms suddenly shot out, wrapping around her waist. He lifted her up, and they tumbled onto the bed together. In an instant, he had her pinned beneath him, their bodies pressed tightly together. Stella's breath caught, and she instinctively tried to push him away. She had thought that after more than 5 years locked in a psychiatric hospital, her heart had turned to stone. But now, looking into his eyes, she found it wasn't so calm after all. She had agreed to be a substitute bride, but she had never intended to sacrifice her body. Besides, she hadn't been a virgin for 5 years. If he found out, it would only lead to unnecessary trouble. The man tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. His voice was low and cool, with a hint of laziness. The Gu family really went all out for a $10 million bride price. You were even willing to fight for the chance to be a young widow. Stella's breathing deepened as she stared directly into his eyes. Mr. Fu, it's not good to curse yourself like that. You're not going to die, and I'm not going to be a widow. In fact, maybe I can help you. Leo toyed with a lock of her hair, his handsome face cool and detached. Oh, you also practice medicine. A subtle, restrained desire emanated from him, captivating her. His voice held a dangerous edge. Stella felt her chest tighten as the sense of danger grew more intense. She spoke calmly and seriously. A moment ago, I felt your pulse. You have a toxin in your system, something you've had since birth. If you don't find a way to eliminate it soon, you will face paralysis in your lower body and muscle atrophy. No amount of exercise you do now will prevent it. Suddenly, the man's gaze turned deadly, as if he were looking at a corpse. Each word seemed to crawl from his throat. Who gave you permission to check? I want to help you. A faint, humorless smile played on Leo's lips. Help me? What's in it for you? Stella's clear, honest eyes met his. To be frank, if I can't stay here, my mother will send me back to the hospital. Helping you is helping myself. In a way, I'm using you. Huh. For the first time, some young girl had the audacity to say she was using him. The man's sharp eyes narrowed. Do you know what happened to the last person who spoke to me like that? Stella frowned, feeling she had inadvertently crossed a line. But the words were out, and she couldn't take them back. Leo stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, his long fingers trailed down to her collarbone. His palm was rough, and the sensation made her body tense involuntarily. Do you know what this marriage is supposed to entail? As he spoke, his hand moved to the zipper at her waist, tracing it lightly. The searing heat and the intimate atmosphere made it hard for her to breathe. What did he mean by this? Did this mean he was letting her stay, and they were supposed to consummate the marriage right now? He seemed to be growing impatient. Staring directly into her eyes, he opened his lips. Are you going to do it yourself, or should I help you? Damn it. There was no way she would go through with this. In a flash of inspiration, Stella devised a plan. She let her arms go limp and draped them around the man's neck. She gave a slight flutter of her pretty, fox-like eyes, her voice turning soft and melodic. How could I trouble you, Mr. Fu? Of course, I'll do it myself. Leo grabbed her by the waist, and with a swift movement, he rolled over, switching their positions. Now, Stella was lying on top of his chest. His gaze was fixed on her, as if waiting for her next move. Stella froze. This was not how the domineering CEO script was supposed to go. Weren't 9 out of 10 of them supposed to be misophobes? Based on his attitude towards her just moments ago, he should have shoved her off in disgust and issued a stern warning. Leo's patience was wearing thin. Well, weren't you going to do it yourself? Stella had no choice. She reached for the buttons on his shirt. Though she tried to appear calm, the slight tremor in her fingertips betrayed her nervousness. After undoing 2 buttons, the man's sexy collarbone and well-defined chest were exposed to her view. Just as she was trying to figure out how to get away, Leo's breathing became ragged. His already pale face turned even whiter, and a fine sheen of sweat broke out on his forehead. His deep eyes began to lose focus, their gaze becoming hazy and scattered. Stella was shocked. These symptoms. He was having an episode. She quickly scrambled off him. What's wrong? Is it an attack? Leo pressed his temples, as if trying to control something with extreme effort. He pointed to the door. Get out. Stella shook her head. She was looking for a way to stay, and she certainly couldn't leave now. She grabbed his hand forcefully, her voice firm but with a hint of softness. Leo Fu, don't move. Take a deep breath. At that moment, the door was pushed open. A woman named Ivy Jiang walked in and went straight to Leo's side. She instinctively reached out to comfort him, but her hand hovered in midair before she let it fall. She asked worriedly, Leo, are you okay? Leo's eyes were dark and gloomy. He merely shot her a cold glance. Seeing his condition worsen, Stella knew she couldn't delay. She gripped his hand and squeezed the tip of one of his fingers, hard. Ivy looked at her and offered a piece of well-intentioned advice. Miss Gu, you'd better not touch him. Leo can't stand being touched by women. He basically explodes, no matter the situation. But in the next second, Leo's hand clamped down on Stella's, his fingers lacing tightly with hers, his knuckles turning white from the force of his grip. Ivy stared in disbelief. She had never seen her brother, Leo, voluntarily initiate physical contact with any woman. She had grown up with him, and even she didn't dare touch him. The butler, who had just rushed in, also froze at the sight. Leo's breathing was erratic, but he seemed to have found an anchor. His fingers tightened around Stella's hand with a force that felt like it could shatter her bones. A cold sweat broke out on Stella's forehead from the pain, but she didn't pull away. She calmly retrieved a silver needle from her bag, preparing to insert it into the pressure point on his hand. Ivy frowned, stopping her. What are you doing? Stella kept her head down, her long lashes veiling her beautiful eyes and the cold resolve within them. Saving him, she said softly. With that, she moved to insert the needle. Ivy rushed over and grabbed her hand, her voice serious. No, don't touch him. I've never seen anyone treat an illness like this. My grandmother is at the hospital. If anything happens to Leo, neither of us can bear the responsibility. Stella shook Ivy's hand off. She lifted her eyelids, finally looking directly at Ivy, and said slowly, if he dies, I'll answer for it. Before Ivy could react, the needle was in. Ivy was taken aback. She hadn't expected Leo's substitute bride to be so cold and arrogant. The butler was stunned as well. Through the haze of his delirium, Leo felt a sharp prick, like a mosquito bite. He glanced at his hand and saw the needle. An image of Stella's defiant coldness when facing the wolf flashed in his mind. He stirred. Seeing his reaction, Stella took out another needle, preparing to insert it into a point on his head. Ivy's face paled. Miss Gu, are you insane? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Stella's eyes turned cold, her patience wearing thin. If you want him to live, then shut up. If you've never seen an illness treated this way, well, now you have. If you can't stand to watch, then get out. Stung by her sharp tone, Ivy's shock slowly turned to anger. Miss Gu, I am Leo Fu's sister. You are threatening his life, and I have every right to protect him. She pointed to the door, her eyes filled with ice. Now please get out. Immediately. Stella ignored her rage and inserted the second needle into a pressure point on top of Leo's head. He closed his unfocused eyes and fell still. Seeing this, Butler Ye's face drained of color. If something happened to the young master, how could he possibly explain it to the old mistress? Ivy commanded. Butler Ye, call security and have her thrown out. The butler turned to leave. Through it all, Stella remained perfectly calm. Seeing the color return to Leo's face, she carefully removed the needles. Leo slowly opened his eyes. The gloom was still there, but they were no longer unfocused. Ivy, forgetting his aversion to women, sat beside him and asked with concern, Leo, how do you feel? She reached out to help him up. Leo stared at her hand as if it were something filthy and quickly recoiled. His voice was laced with cold anger and disgust. Get out. Ivy froze, her hand suspended in midair, her cheeks burning. A moment ago, she had seen him not reject Stella's touch and had thought his aversion to women was cured. Biting her lip, she stood up and backed away. But she was still worried about him, so she didn't leave immediately. Stella finished sterilizing the needles and placed them back in their case before turning to him. How do you feel now? Leo's gaze on Stella deepened. It seemed she really did no traditional medicine. Her composure while treating his episode was the same as when she'd faced the wolf, calm and collected. But unlike her ferocity then, this was different. She didn't seem like someone who had been in a mental institution, nor did she seem like an ordinary young woman. He narrowed his eyes, his voice low. Your needles can handle a wolf and cure an illness. Can they also kill? Stella's hands paused for a fraction of a second. She understood. He was suspicious of her. After all, a substitute bride who knew medicine and wasn't afraid of wolves. It was only natural for him to be wary. Stella finished packing her needles and turned back to him with a faint smile. You must be joking, mister. Phew, my needles are only for saving people. Leo looked down, his gaze lingering ambiguously on her hand. Her fingers were slender and beautiful, looking delicate in the light filtering through the blinds. The back of her hand, where he had gripped it, was still slightly red, giving it an unexpectedly fragile appearance. Ivy saw that Leo seemed to be fine and breathed a sigh of relief, but her brow furrowed as she looked at Stella's calm demeanor. She had woken Leo up with just a few needles. Usually, his episodes of pain would last for 1 to 3 hours, sometimes even longer. Just then, Butler Yi returned with 2 bodyguards. He saw Leo sitting up, fully lucid, and stared in disbelief, completely forgetting why he had come. He saw a glimmer of hope. Miss Gu, can you cure our young master? Butler Yi. Leo interrupted, his brow slightly furrowed. The butler fell silent. Leo glanced at Stella and gave an order. Take Miss Gu to a guest room to rest. Yes, sir. Stella wasn't sure what he was planning, but she followed Butler Yi out of the room. She would take things as they came. Inside the room, Leo noticed Ivy was still there. He frowned, his calm voice tinged with impatience. Why are you still here? Oh, Leo, I came to tell you. Grandma collapsed on the street. She's at the hospital now. Leo's expression shifted. You go to the hospital first. I'll be right behind you. Okay. After Ivy left, Leo opened his closet and simultaneously dialed a number on his phone. Mr. Fu, any news on the woman from 5 years ago? Sean sure sighed on the other end. Not yet. The thumb ring you gave her has never surfaced on the black market. Finding her is going to be difficult. A spark ignited in Leo's usually calm eyes, like a wildfire on a vast prairie, only to be slowly extinguished until it vanished. His voice turned to ice. Keep looking. Yes, sir. Pick me up. We're going to the hospital. Right away. At the hospital, the Fu matriarch was propped up in bed, excitedly recounting her rescue to Ivy. Ivy, my dear, you have to help me find that girl. I need to thank her properly. If it weren't for her, I would have died on that street. Ivy gently patted her back, soothing her. Grandma, don't get too excited. Of course, I'll find her and thank her personally. Just then, Leo and Sean arrived. Seeing her grandson, Mrs. Fu beckoned to him sternly. Leo, you're just in time. I need to talk to you. Ivy moved aside, taking a seat on a small stool. Leo strode to the bedside. Seeing the 4 in her hand and her weary face, he frowned, his chiding tone filled with concern. Grandma, it's so hot outside. Why were you wandering the streets by yourself? Mrs. Fu glared at her grandson. What do you think? It was for your marriage. I heard you were marrying the 3rd Miss Gu. It's a marriage. Of course I had to consult a master to check your compatibility charts. Leo's brow tightened. He shot a glance at Ivy, a cold displeasure radiating from him. Ivy felt his gaze, lowered her own, and whispered, I'm sorry, Leo. I shouldn't have said anything. Seeing this, Mrs. Fu frowned and came to her defense. Why are you blaming her? Even if Ivy hadn't told me, I would have found out about the substitute bride eventually. The Gu family pulling a stunt like this shows they have no respect for us. Let me tell you, even if both their daughters were offered to you for free, you are not to have them. Annul the marriage immediately. Leo's gaze deepened, sensing there was more to his grandmother's words. He loosened his tie and said flatly, Grandma, just say what you mean. The master I consulted said her birth chart is completely incompatible with yours. She has the fate of a woman who brings ruin to her husband. You can't handle the Gu family's second daughter. Mrs. Fu paused, as if remembering something, and grabbed Leo's hand, her expression resolute. For the future of the Fu family, for us to have grandchildren, you will listen to me and call off this wedding immediately. I have already found a much better girl for you. I owe her my life, and as the old saying goes, a life saved is a life owed. The debt of the grandmother must be paid by the grandson. If you two don't get married, it will be an absolute scandal. Ivy's lips tightened. It wasn't hard to guess that the good girl her grandmother was talking about was the woman who had saved her. Mrs. Fu had already balled her fist, fully expecting her grandson to refuse so she could give him a light smack. She was shocked when he agreed so readily. A wide, toothy grin spread across her face. Now that's my boy. Good girls are getting harder to find these days. That little angel who saved me. One look at her, and you can tell she's destined to bring her husband good fortune. And she has the face of the granddaughter-in-law I've always dreamed of. You, my boy, are in for a treat. Ivy's expression froze, and she dug her nails into her palms, lowering her head. Leo knew better than to argue with his grandmother at a time like this. From experience, he knew she would resort to tears, threats, and hysterics. He would thank the girl in person, of course. He could offer her money or power, anything she wanted, except the title of Mrs. Fu. Seeing his silence, Ivy took it as a sign of agreement and bit her lip gently. Well, what are you standing there for? Go find her. Having achieved her goal, Mrs. Fu impatiently pushed her grandson, urging him on. As if afraid her little angel would fly away if he delayed another second, she added sternly, listen to me. I want all the information on that little angel within 10 minutes. Leo was speechless. He pinched the bridge of his nose, exasperated by his grandmother's unreasonable demand. It might not be that fast. Mrs. Fu was not pleased. What do you mean by that? Are you just humoring me? In those billionaire romance novels, the hero can find his little darling's information in 3 to 5 minutes. I'm giving you a generous 10. What are you so dissatisfied about? Leo's face was a blank mask. Your eyesight is getting bad. You should read fewer of those novels. Mrs. Fu looked guilty for a moment and rubbed her nose. Sean, trying to suppress a laugh, chimed in. Mrs. Fu, those novels are fiction. Realistically, to get a complete background check on someone, it would take at least 3 days and 3 nights. Mrs. Fu was silent. After a moment, she pouted. Fine, 3 days it is. And within those 3 days, I want this business with the Gu family completely resolved. Leo pursed his lips. Grandma, you should rest. Don't worry about anything else. All right. You go handle your business. Leo glanced at his watch, then looked at Ivy. Take care of Grandma. Ivy nodded gently. Don't worry, Leo. I'll take good care of her. After Leo left, Ivy sat back down beside Mrs. Fu and asked caringly, Grandma, would you like to sleep for a bit? Mrs. Fu was still agitated. No. How can I sleep when we haven't found my little angel? Ivy patted her hand and smiled faintly. Grandma, you seem so eager. She must be a wonderful girl. Mrs. Fu nodded emphatically. Of course. She's the granddaughter-in-law I chose myself. It would be even better if she's single. Mrs. Fu paused. It hadn't even occurred to her to ask if the girl was married. She frowned, annoyed that she had fainted at such an inopportune moment. It's fine. Even if she has a boyfriend or is married, we have to find her and thank her properly. Mrs. Fu conveniently ignored the first part of Ivy's sentence. Having Leo marry her is the only true way to thank her. Ivy's lips pursed as she said casually, I heard the Gu family's daughter has a difficult personality. Do you think she'll be hard to deal with? I think it would be better to make her leave on her own. Mrs. Fu agreed with this. So how do we make her leave on her own? She asked, annoyed. Ivy thought for a moment. Grandma, you can act exceptionally harsh and critical, like one of those evil matriarchs from the dramas. I'll play the part of Leo's future wife. She'll get the hint and leave on her own accord. Mrs. Fu frowned and shot her a sidelong glance, her tone sharp with disapproval. I'm not senile yet. Ivy, you can only ever be Leo's sister, my god-granddaughter. What's this about being his wife? Nonsense. Not even for an act. Hearing this, Ivy's hands clenched unconsciously. I misspoke. Let's not talk about this. Ivy, you have good connections. You should help me look for her too. We can't just rely on Sean. Ivy nodded. As she walked out of the room, she pulled out her phone and made a call. Just as she opened the door, she said seriously, Today, on Huixing Road. Mrs. Fu heard her making the call and nodded in satisfaction. Ivy was much more efficient than her grandson. She hadn't doted on this god-granddaughter for nothing all these years. With so many people helping her search, she felt much more at ease. After the hospital room door closed, the person on the other end of the phone asked, Miss Jiang, what about Huixing Road? Oh, Ivy said smoothly. It's nothing. If you need anything, just let me know. You don't have to be so formal. All right, Ivy replied, before slowly hanging up, a deep look in her eyes. That afternoon, Butler Yi heard from a maid that Mrs. Fu had arrived at the estate. He excitedly dropped what he was doing and rushed to greet her. He had to tell her the good news. The young master could be saved. From a distance, he saw Ivy supporting her, whispering something in her ear. He hurried over. Mrs. Fu, you're finally back. Did you know, the young master's new bride? She can. Mrs. Fu frowned in displeasure. What bride? Go and bring the second Miss Gu to the living room. I have something to say to her. No, Mrs. Fu, the second Miss Gu today. Ivy gently interrupted him. Butler Yi, don't be hasty. Grandma wants to talk to her about what happened today. Just go and bring her over. The butler assumed Ivy must have already told Mrs. Fu about how the young Miss Gu had cured the young master with her needles. With that thought, he said no more. Very well, I'll go get her now. Butler Yi arrived outside Stella's guest room and knocked. Miss Gu, it's me. Stella had been reading for a while and was just about to find the butler to ask about Leo's condition when he showed up himself. She got up to open the door. The butler looked at her and said politely, Miss Gu, Mrs. Fu has returned and would like to see you. Of course, Stella nodded. She stepped out, closed the door, and then asked, How frequently has Mr. Fu been having these episodes recently? Butler Yi answered respectfully, about once or twice a week. A grave look crossed Stella's face. This illness could not be delayed any longer. Miss Gu, do you really have a way to cure our young master? Stella raised an eyebrow slightly, her voice gentle. I will do my best. The main thing is that I need his cooperation. Butler Yi nodded. Of course. As they spoke, they arrived at the living room. Stella looked up and saw Mrs. Fu sitting on the sofa with her back to her. She exuded an air of stern authority that made the entire atmosphere feel heavy. Ivy was sitting beside her, diligently peeling an apple. Stella frowned in confusion. She felt that Mrs. Fu's back looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place where she had seen it before. Ivy said, "Grandma, the apple is peeled. Should I slice it for you?" "No need, Mrs. Fu replied, her usual warmth gone, her tone filled with regal command. Ivy nodded and handed her the apple. She then seemed to notice Stella for the first time. "Miss Gu, did you rest well this afternoon?" Stella could hear a hint of a hostess's authority in her concerned tone. She glanced at her briefly. "Just fine." She then turned her gaze to Mrs. Fu, who still had her back to her. It seemed this was not going to be an easy meeting. She offered a polite greeting. "Mrs. Fu, hello? I'm Stella Gu." Mrs. Fu froze. That voice. She turned her head, and sure enough, she saw the familiar face. Exquisitely beautiful, with a smile that was neither too deep nor too shallow, yet it struck her right in the heart. This was her angel, the one she had been dreaming of finding. What 3 days and 3 nights? She was right here, in front of her. Stella was also stunned. She never would have guessed that the old woman she had casually saved was the Fu matriarch. Mrs. Fu's proud, almost harsh demeanor vanished in an instant. She rushed over and grabbed Stella's hands. The apple in her hands suddenly felt like an obstacle. She tossed it onto the coffee table and took Stella's hands again. Ivy stared at the now dirty apple on the table and quietly dug her nails into her palms. Mrs. Fu was overjoyed. It felt like happiness had come too suddenly, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. Ivy looked at Stella, her breath catching in her throat. Could it be? Was Stella Gu the girl who had saved her grandmother? How could such a coincidence exist in this world? Stella wasn't as emotional, merely surprised. She asked with concern, "Why did you leave the hospital so soon? Are you feeling better?" Mrs. Fu beamed. "I heard Leo was getting married, so I rushed back to see. I never imagined it would be you. First you save me, and then you marry my grandson. This is fate." In that moment, Mrs. Fu felt 1,000 times happier than if she had secured the lead dancer spot in her public square dance group. She had completely forgotten the purpose of her return. Ivy's hands clenched tightly. The most unlikely scenario had actually happened. Mrs. Fu suddenly remembered that her grandson had also wanted to annul the marriage. Her heart sank, and her expression grew serious. "Stella dear, that boy hasn't been bullying you, has he?" Stella was a bit overwhelmed by the old woman's warmth, especially since she had been bracing herself for a tough fight. She just shook her head gently. "No." Mrs. Fu let out a sigh of relief. Good, good. If he dares to bully you, you tell me. I'll disown him." Stella was taken aback. "That won't be necessary." Mrs. Fu saw her fair skin and her sweet, obedient demeanor, and the way she was already defending her grandson. She found her more and more pleasing to the eye. "Stella, from now on, you treat this place as your own home." Stella nodded. "Okay. Ivy, where is Stella staying?" Hearing Mrs. Fu call Stella Stella dear, while she herself had only ever been Ivy since the day she entered the Fu household, Ivy felt a bitter taste in her mouth. "Grandma, Miss Gu is staying in the guest room." Mrs. Fu was not pleased. She frowned immediately. "What Miss Gu? She is your brother's lawfully wedded wife. You should be calling her sister-in-law." Ivy's mouth twitched. She immediately corrected herself, calling out politely, "Sister-in-law. That's better. Go move your sister-in-law's things into your brother's room. A married couple should act like one. What kind of couple sleeps in separate rooms? Even if you fight, it should be at opposite ends of the same bed." Ivy hesitated, biting her lip as she reminded her, "Grandma, you know what Leo's temper is like. If we do this without his permission, will it be all right? If he has a problem, tell him to take it up with me." Ivy said no more and instructed the butler to handle it. Stella actually didn't want to share a room with Leo either. She said, a bit hesitantly, "Mrs. Fu, actually." "What Mrs. Fu? You should change how you address me. You should call me Grandma." Stella pursed her lips, but finally, the word came out. "Grandma, yes." Mrs. Fu's grin was so wide it almost split her face. "Grandma, I'll go to my room to pack my things." Mrs. Fu nodded. "All right, you've had a long day. Once you're done packing, go get some rest." Okay, back in the guest room, Stella finally breathed a sigh of relief. From the looks of it, she would be able to stay. Just then, a video call came through on her phone. Stella sat down on the sofa and answered it. On the other end of the screen was a devilishly handsome man in his late 20s. He stretched lazily, narrowing his long, phoenix eyes. "How are things at the Fu estate?" he asked languidly. "Not bad. There's just a chirping, annoying little bird." Chase Chin took a drag from his cigarette and slowly exhaled, the smoke blurring his handsome features, making him look even more alluring. Even a passerby in the background couldn't help but turn to look at him. He raised an eyebrow. "Want your big brother to take care of her for you?" Stella shrugged nonchalantly. "No need. Just tell me, what's the important news?" After all, a man as busy as him, with international dealings, wouldn't call just to check in. Chase's tone turned serious. "Someone is investigating you. It's likely related to what happened 5 years ago." Stella was silent for a moment before replying, "Don't worry. They won't find anything." "Are you sure you're okay? Just say the word, and I'll handle it for you." "I'm fine," she said, before getting to the real point. "Is there any news on the owner of that thumb ring?" The man stubbed out his cigarette, his expression unusually grave. Nothing. Keep looking. You got it. I have a date. Can't keep the lady waiting. He hung up. Stella leaned back on the sofa, her expression cool. She refused to believe that there were no clues left from 5 years ago. Pushing the thought aside, she gathered her simple luggage and took it to the master bedroom. The vast room, decorated in shades of blue and white, was so minimalist it felt cold, yet it possessed a grand, imposing aura, much like Leo Fu himself. Thinking of him, Stella took the toiletries the butler had prepared and went into the bathroom. The woman in the mirror had a devastatingly beautiful face, with long, slender eyebrows above a pair of stunning fox-like eyes. The slight upward tilt at the corners added a touch of charm, while her gaze held a hidden layer of pride. She had been sent away to the mountains by her parents when she was too young to even remember. At 18, she was brought back, only to have her own sister orchestrate the ruin of her innocence and her mother commit her to a psychiatric hospital. She had been more than capable of walking out of that hospital, but she hadn't. She had been waiting for her mother to remember her, waiting for an apology from her own family. But what she got instead was a summons to be a substitute bride. If that was the case, then she had no need for these so-called relatives. That evening, Leo Fu returned. Butler Yi recounted the day's events to him. He went directly to Mrs. Fu's room and knocked. Inside, Ivy was helping the old woman take her medicine. Seeing him, she greeted him obediently. Leo had no desire to speak to her, and Ivy, taking the hint, excused herself. Mrs. Fu finished the last of her herbal medicine, popped a candied date into her mouth, and then said slowly, "Here to question me." Leo's face was cold. "Didn't you say she would bring ruin to her husband?" Mrs. Fu glared at him. Nonsense. That last master wasn't skilled enough. I found someone else to do a reading. This girl of mine, she's destined to bring her husband and children good fortune. And what's more, she can cure your illness. Not only does she know medicine, but more importantly, she's kind-hearted. She saved my life. You should be thanking your lucky stars you get to marry such a wonderful girl." Leo frowned. He hadn't expected the girl who saved his grandmother to be the substitute bride. Was it a coincidence? Seeing him lost in thought, Mrs. Fu thought her words were working and pressed her advantage. "The master also said you have the fate of a lone star, destined for misfortune, and she's the only one who can counter your bad energy. You two are a match made in heaven." "A lone star?" Leo's voice held a trace of weariness. "Grandma, are you the master?" "Oh, my back. It's acting up again. That fall I took today really did a number on me. Oh, I can't. I need to rest. Leo, you go get some rest too. Oh, it hurts so much, ouch." With that, she clicked off the light, plunging the room into darkness, leaving only the sound of her groans. Leo had no choice but to leave. Sean was waiting for him outside. "Miss Gu is in your bedroom now. Should I send her back to her room?" Leo's long eyelashes shadowed his eyes, hiding his emotions. His voice was a bit hoarse. "No need." Sean nodded. It seemed the young master intended to deal with Miss Gu himself. Leo stood at his bedroom door, the image of her taming the wolf flashing in his mind. Her ferocity. First, the substitute marriage, then saving his grandmother. Step by step. Was it all just a coincidence? With that thought, he pushed the door open. The room was dark, with only the pale moonlight filtering through the blinds. In the faint light, he saw Stella curled up on the sofa, fast asleep. He approached her, his footsteps unconsciously softening. She was sleeping soundly, all the pride and defiance she wore when awake gone, leaving only a quiet, gentle stillness. She looked like a small cat. He glanced around. The room was as tidy as ever. She hadn't touched a thing. His grandmother's words echoed in his ears. His throat moved slightly, his pupils deep and dark like the vast cosmos, shining brightly. In the end, he didn't wake her. The next morning, Stella got ready and opened her door. Just as she reached the corner, she ran into Leo coming from the opposite direction. He was wearing a crisp white shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, exuding a cold, yet seductive aura. His trousers were impeccably ironed, his legs long and slender, giving him a tall, imposing, yet refined and ascetic presence. Just by looking at him, you would never guess he was a man on the brink of death. Stella needed to talk to him anyway. She tilted her head up and said, "I need to go back to the Gu house." "I'll go with you." His tone left no room for refusal. Stella was surprised. She had thought he would be resistant, given that she was just a substitute bride. A bride he seemed quite dissatisfied with. Thinking this, she replied, "Actually, I can go by myself. This was Grandma's arrangement. If you don't want me to go with you, you can go and refuse her yourself." Leo interrupted her, his expression unreadable. Of course, Stella couldn't do that. She managed to smile. No need to go to all that trouble. When they reached the living room, Butler Yi informed Leo that Ivy had accompanied Mrs. Fu to the hospital for a checkup. After a simple meal, Leo and Stella left. In the car, he leaned back against the leather seat, his eyes closed, radiating a do-not-approach aura that seemed innate. His right hand was idly rubbing a jade thumb ring on his left thumb, over and over. It was a piece of high-quality jade, crystal clear and richly colored. Stella's expression grew solemn. She thought of the thumb ring the man from 5 years ago had left her. It was made of top-grade imperial green jadeite, incredibly valuable. Before she was sent to the psychiatric hospital, she had stored it in a bank's safe deposit box. Yesterday, she had asked her assistant to retrieve it, only to be told that Gu had already taken it, using a certificate stating that Stella was mentally ill and incapable of managing her own affairs. Today, she would get it back, no matter what it took. 40 minutes later, they arrived at the Gu family villa. Leo and Stella got out of the car together. The butler, Uncle Jean, was shocked. The man exuding a cold, unapproachable aura. Could he be the new son-in-law? He hurried to greet them. "Second, miss, I'll go announce your arrival." Stella waved him off. "No need. You can go back to your work." "Very well." The Gu villa had no festive atmosphere. There were no red decorations, as if no daughter had just been married off. Leo's eyes were like ice, and his already pale face seemed even colder. The servants nearby whispered amongst themselves, unable to believe that this man was the legendary second son of the Fu family. The two of them passed through the small garden and entered the living room. From a distance, Stella heard her mother's shrill, harsh voice. "Finally got rid of that little brat. Now we can have some peace and quiet." "Mom, don't think like that. My sister has had it rough," Cynthia said in her classic, two-faced tone. "You're defending her again. Did you forget how she treated you yesterday? I told you, from now on, you don't have this sister. Right now, I just pray the Fu family doesn't find out about her sordid past. Otherwise, the entire Gu family will suffer." Charles Gu said gravely. "What sordid past makes you shun your own daughter?" The sudden voice startled Helen. When she turned and saw Leo, she froze. She had never seen Leo in person and didn't know what he looked like. But this man was perfectly healthy, not at all like a crippled invalid on his deathbed. Helen frowned. Regardless of who he was, she pointed a finger at Stella and started screaming. "You wretched girl. Instead of staying put at the Fu house, you spend the night with some random man and have the audacity to bring him back here? Do you know that if you offend the Fu family, our entire family will be ruined?" Stella let out a cold laugh. It was one thing to insult her, but to insult Leo as well? Oh, this was going to be a good show. Cynthia was also sizing him up. She hadn't known Stella knew such a man. He radiated an aura of born royalty, stood a good 6 feet tall, and had a handsome, chiseled face that was utterly captivating. From his bearing to his looks, he was clearly a man of exceptional standing. She was stunned for a moment before saying sweetly, "Sister, you're a married woman now. You can't be as reckless as you used to be. Your husband won't be happy." With just a few words, the little snake had managed to brand her as a promiscuous woman. Stella nonchalantly glanced at Leo. His eyes held a destructive coldness. She raised an eyebrow, ready to watch the drama unfold. "So, Mr. Fu accompanying me on a visit home is fooling around. Mom, Dad, isn't he the husband you found for me? How did he become a random man?" Hearing this, Cynthia's sweet, gentle expression instantly vanished, replaced by utter shock. Helen was too stunned to speak. "What?" The rumors said Leo Fu was an ugly, disabled man. The man in front of her just stared at the mother-daughter duo, his gaze disdainful, noble, and icy, as if he were looking at ants. Helen felt a flicker of fear under his stare, her eyes darting around as she sized him up. He was supposed to be a cripple who could barely stand, so how was he standing before her now? What about him looked like a man at death's door? Cynthia's face turned pale, and she bit her lip, refusing to believe this man was Leo Fu. Faced with the stalemate, Charles, as the head of the household, quickly recovered. He scolded his wife and daughter. "What nonsense are you two spouting? Apologize now." Helen quickly changed her tune. "Son-in-law, we didn't know you were arriving so early. Please, come in and sit." Leo glanced at his watch with a slow, deliberate motion, his voice frigid. "Is 10 o'clock considered early? Or perhaps this random man is not worthy of your attention?" He was deliberately backing her into a corner. "Son-in-law, that's not what I meant, I was." Leo's cold voice cut her off, each word sharp. "In that case, we can dispense with the titles of father-in-law and mother-in-law." Helen said hurriedly, "Of course not. I'm sorry, it was my mistake. I failed to recognize you." "Mr. Fu, Mom didn't mean it like that. She was just worried my sister would do something to betray you. That's why she..." "Noisy." Leo glanced at Sean, who stood nearby. Sean rolled up his sleeves. When it came to a fight, he had never lost. He swung his hand and delivered a hard slap across Cynthia's face. Cynthia was stunned, her cheek instantly turning red. In her entire life, she had never been hit by a man. Tears of humiliation welled up in her eyes, but she didn't dare say a word. Even Stella was surprised that Leo had Sean act so directly. That slap was heavy. Leo glanced at Cynthia, who was now silent. "Is my wife someone you can lecture?" The authority radiating from him was overwhelming. A simple raise of his eyebrow was enough to make people avert their gaze. Stella was taken aback. He had called her my wife so naturally. Anyone would think they had been married for 10 years. Helen and Charles were heartbroken for their daughter, but they didn't dare protest. Just then, Leo's cold eyes scanned the living room. From the moment we walked in, there has been no sign of celebration for a daughter's marriage. Is this your way of protesting this union? Of course not. It's just. Charles had never spoken to someone of such stature. Every word from Leo was like a weight pressing down on him, and he found himself stammering. Cynthia, tears in her eyes, spoke up softly to defend her father. Brother-in-law, you misunderstand. Mom and Dad were just sad that my sister was leaving home, so they asked for everything to be kept simple. Stella looked at her. Cynthia was very good with words, and with her pitiful, wronged expression, any man would soften. Leo, however, was an exception. Was one slap not enough? Cynthia's face paled, and she didn't dare utter another word. Charles quickly ordered a servant to bring tea, trying desperately to curry favor. Mr. Fu, please stay for lunch. Lunch won't be necessary. However, I've heard that the new bride you sent me was committed to a psychiatric hospital 5 years ago, due to her promiscuous lifestyle. Stella frowned slightly. This was quite a turn of events. Charles's expression tightened. The phrase "the bride you sent me" made his skin crawl, as if he were sitting on pins and needles. Leo Fu had come to hold them accountable for secretly substituting Stella for Cynthia. Cynthia's heart pounded. If she said now that it was her sister's own doing, would they make Stella marry into the Fu family again? But she didn't dare speak. She could only shoot her mother a meaningful look. Helen, of course, understood her daughter's thoughts. But at this point, Leo would never believe them. It would only make things worse. She forced a smile and explained. How could that be? Our Stella has always been a proper young lady. You mustn't listen to baseless rumors, Mr. Fu. It must be some jealous socialites spreading gossip because of Stella's good fortune. Don't listen to their nonsense. Leo's sharp eyes narrowed, sweeping over Charles and Helen. Is that so? Although it was a question, his tone made it clear he didn't believe them. Charles felt a headache coming on. If things went south, not only would Stella be sent back, but the entire Gu family might face ruin. He wiped the sweat from his brow. The substitute marriage was a done deal. All he could do now was appease this young master. Mr. Fu, what you heard was just malicious slander. I know my own daughter best. She's always been well-behaved, never even had a boyfriend. In that case, you maliciously locked her in a hospital? Leo raised an eyebrow, crossing his legs, and bone-deep chill radiated from him. The living room fell silent. Charles could see it now. Leo was doing this on purpose. No matter what they said, he wouldn't be pleased. It was all because these two women couldn't keep their mouths shut and had angered him. Now, he felt like he was about to be thrown into a pot of boiling oil. If he said it wasn't malicious, Leo would surely blame him for sending a mentally ill daughter to be a substitute bride. Helen cleared her throat and gave a vague answer. You misunderstand, Mr. Fu. Stella used to suffer from chronic insomnia. I heard the doctors at that hospital were excellent, so I sent her there. It wasn't really a mental illness. Leo looked at her, his gaze scrutinizing. Is that so? Stella couldn't figure out his intentions. All she knew was that she had to protect herself. Helen finally breathed a sigh of relief. Leo then asked, Is your insomnia cured? Stella met his gaze, saw the light in his eyes like a sea of stars, and nodded. It's cured. She suddenly had a feeling that he was not a man who would let others dictate his life. This was his way of determining, in a real sense, whether she, Stella Gu, was fit to be his wife. Leo noted her compliant attitude and didn't press the matter further. But from time to time, he would remember the look in her eyes as she subdued the wolf, fierce and ruthless. Charles quickly said, Here, Mr. Fu, have some tea. This is fresh tea from Nongqing. It's quite good. Leo didn't take it. Stella had no desire to watch this family's hypocritical act any longer. She turned to Helen. Mom, there's something I want to talk to you about. Helen had been looking for an opportunity to ask her questions anyway. She followed Stella into a bedroom. As soon as the door closed, Helen erupted. They said he was on his deathbed, so why does he seem like a normal person? You didn't even call ahead to warn us. Now your sister has been hit, and we're in such a passive position. Stella Gu, what are you trying to pull? Stella ignored her anger. Her eyes narrowed, her voice low and laced with impatience. You took something from my safe deposit box. It was a thumb ring. It's mine. If you don't want to cause unnecessary trouble, give it back to me, now. Helen's anger came to a screeching halt. You already took your sister's shares. Why are you bringing this up again? Stella had long given up hope on her. This reaction was entirely expected. She raised a cold eyebrow. Whether I was indecent 5 years ago or you and my sister conspired against me, you know the truth in your heart. If you don't return the ring, what do you think I'm capable of doing today? Helen felt a pang of guilt, but she was also worried Stella would cause a scene over the ring. She frowned. I gave it to your sister after I took it out. It's just a ring. Don't bring it up again. It was Cynthia again. But somehow, that too was expected. Stella unclenched her fists, the chill in her eyes deepening. It's with her, is it? I'll go get it back from her now. Helen immediately grabbed her. Stella Gu, what are you talking about? It's your own sister. How can you take back something you gave to your sister? To Cynthia and her mother, it was just a ring. But to her, it was the key to making her life whole again. Stella laughed. her eyes filled with a coldness that no longer hurt her. Each word was deliberate. From now on, you'd better protect your precious daughter. After 5 years apart, Helen had never seen her like this. She felt a flicker of panic. Stella had changed. Stella wasted no more words and turned to walk back to the living room. Where are you going? Stella didn't look back, her voice cold. To get back what belongs to me. Just then, Cynthia walked into the living room carrying a fruit platter. As she bent down to place it on the table, a necklace slipped out from under her collar, and the exquisite thumb ring was exposed for all to see. Stella stopped in her tracks, her hands clenched into tight fists. The events of 5 years ago became clearer than ever. Her mother's heartless indifference, her sister's vicious scheming, her dead child, and the stranger who had tormented her all night, ignoring her pleas. Every detail flooded her memory. Stella's breathing grew heavy, and hatred filled her. At the same time, Leo saw the thumb ring. His usual noble, detached expression flickered. He reached out and snatched the ring from the necklace. Brother-in-law. Leo didn't even look at her. He held the ring in his hand, rubbing it gently. He looked up, his voice so cold it was terrifying. Who gave this to you? Cynthia froze, her eyes on the ring in his hand. This was the ring she had taken from Stella. Could it be his? Impossible. To torment Stella, she had deliberately arranged for a 60-year-old man. This couldn't be his. But whether it was his or not, he clearly recognized it. This meant she could use the ring to get closer to him. Looking at his handsome, almost otherworldly face, a greedy light entered Cynthia's eyes. Leo Fu should have been her man. From childhood, everything of Stella's had become hers. This time, she had carelessly let Stella have him. No matter. She could take him back. Hearing no response, Leo's patience wore thin. The cold in his eyes seemed to freeze over. I'll ask you one more time. Where did you get this ring? On the stairs, Stella watched Leo's emotional turmoil. Her own hands clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms, but she felt no pain. Could it be? Was Leo the owner of this ring? She wanted to know the truth, but she didn't rush forward. She waited quietly. Cynthia took a deep breath. She couldn't speak rashly until she understood the situation. She put on a wronged, pitiful expression. A very important person gave it to me. Leo's fingers tightened around the ring, feeling its familiar shape. He was never mistaken. This was his ring. The token he had given that woman 5 years ago. Afterwards, she had never come to find him. All information about her had been erased, irretrievable even by the world's top hackers. By the time he found her, he was told she had died in childbirth. But he never believed that the small, cat-like girl in his arms was dead. Leo stared into her eyes and pressed on. Who was that person? Cynthia's mind raced. After a moment, she gave a vague answer. I don't know. The memories are fragmented. I just know this ring is very important to me, so I always wear it. Brother-in-law, how do you know it? Leo drew his hand back. In that moment, he was certain. The woman wasn't dead. He had been looking for the wrong person. Nearby, Stella was still waiting for an answer, wanting to know the connection between the ring and Leo Fu. At the same time, Cynthia asked cautiously, Brother-in-law, who is the owner of this ring to you? Or, is this your ring? Cynthia had voiced the very question in Stella's heart. Her own heart began to pound wildly, and she held her breath.